Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to show you how we can make Firestore awesome with generics. So why that? A problem I've seen is that a lot of tutorials, they create both unnecessary service classes and they are actually duplicate as well. So here we have an example of the problem. It's just a simple one. We start off with a view that can create different documents for the collection it belongs to. So you see here, I would create a user document in the users collection. Same goes for the messages in message collection and to do. You get the idea. Now, let's move to the create view model. It's just a simple view model that sits between our view and our service classes. The view model is injected with 3 different services you see here. And for each service, they represent the collection we're interacting with. So a service for users collection, users documents, and the same goes for messages, and the same goes for the to-dos. This is a classical example that I've seen a lot. So let's move and look closer at the service classes. Here we just have a protocol that this user service conforms to, and we create a document, a user document in the users collection. That is done with Codeable, because if you look at the user public here, just Codeable. Normal stuff. Okay, let's look at the to-do service protocol. And you see that they are awfully similar. You see that just the path and the document, or you can say the model itself, that differs. So dependency injection is of course encouraged, but I want to stop you for a second. Are we actually thinking here, or are we just blindly following a pattern now? Because why are we creating different services for separate collections and documents? That's the first one. And the second one, if you look at the Firestore API, we can actually extend the Firestore itself. And you see when I extend, it's actually a class. So when we already have a class, why are we creating a service class at all? We are importing Firestore here as a dependency, and then we are creating a dependency class. It doesn't quite sit well with me. So let us tackle the first problem. Let us get rid of all of these service classes and just have one. Okay, so I open the side panel and just remove the to-do service. I don't need it. And remove the message service. And instead now let's have a more generic solution and rename this one. That one is always slow, to Firestore service instead. Okay, just rename this one to Firestore service protocol. Take one, copy, and this one is going to conform to that. So let's go with Firestore service. Okay, now comes the fun part. Here you see that we have the Firestore API. We are accessing the database, we're accessing the collection users, and adding the document. Let's take a closer look at the API. So if you open a document, you can actually see that it expects a generic type. It doesn't expect a user document or a to-do document. It expects just a generic type. And that generic type just has to conform to encodable, which we already saw that our document, all of documents, they conform to codable. So why are we actually passing in a specific model? I've seen this a lot and it doesn't make sense. So let us implement the solution. You saw here that they use the, this is the older way of having a generic, doing it like this. You can still use it, but there's a newer way. I think it's from Swift 5.5 that is a little bit more nicer. So you can do some. It's the exact same thing, some codable instead. Let us do the same here, so it works. Cool. And now we can add a document from model and it should compile. Cool. This one should compile. The other one, yeah, they will yell at us, but that's all right. Okay. Now, the only thing we miss is the path, because the path 2, why are we constraining this to only the user's path? Well, instead, I will pass in the path, so this becomes more generic. Okay. Call a path here, Command B, and this now should work. Cool, and of course, I forgot this one too. Let's just paste it in here. Command B, and now let's move and fix the errors here. Now we can get rid of all of these and instead have a Firestore service. We call this Firestore service protocol. Get rid of these two. Firestore service and paste in the Firestore service protocol. Just yank it maybe. No, I go with Firestore service and do it like this and set it to that one. Now we are only injecting one dependency instead of 3. Okay, and just remove this. These are not that important. I just want to demonstrate how the service class works. So if I do new Firestore service to create path and just say users, for example, and model, let's say we use the user public. In this case, this will be the user model and use the name in this case. This isn't that important. I just want to demonstrate that we have now a generic class that we can use. It doesn't need to be a user service or a message service or to-do service. That doesn't matter. We can remove all of these, and we can say Firestore service instead, and move this one over here, make this one small, and we have an unexpected, and remove that. Now everything should compile. And if you see now, let's see, the preview is always slow. Nice. So if you see now, if I create a user here, I say my name and create user, and we move to Firestore, you can see that I created a document here with Firestore. Cool. Let's move back to Xcode. And if I do the same now, just to prove it to you, if I make to do's here and we have a to do and we have the task itself, so it will be to do, and we go back now, we just compile and move back to the view itself and we run it. And let's move here and say to do. What do I have to do? I have to eat bagels. That is important. Create a to do. I do the same thing. Let's move back to here. We update Firestore. And you see now we have to do. I didn't have to create a separate class or specify the model because Firestore itself expects a generic one that conforms to encodable. Cool. Now, let's move to the second problem. Why are we actually using a service class at all? Because, like I said, Firestore is actually a class itself. So let's try and remove this service class. Okay. Let's go back to Firestore service. And instead of adding a service, this is so simple. You can just do like this and instead do an extension, Firestore. You can have a protocol if you want. It doesn't really matter. The only reason for having a protocol is for either testing here or in another case, let's say you start using a different database and you want to have the same consistency, as long as that different database conform to this protocol, the same thing will work. So you can have it if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Now we can go back to the create view model and we can remove this one and we can remove all this. And instead we create an instance of the database, private let d be equal to firestore.firestore. And instead we do db here. Let me show you again with the messages now. Just to prove it to you, messages, create a model, a message from the message here. Go back to our create view and do a command option P. Should load and everything should be fine. And now let's do a message and say, hello, create message, and do the same thing again. I'll move to my screen here and let's update it. And you can see we have message with the message, hello. Awesome. Okay. Now we have got rid of 3 classes, and when we want to inject the Firestore dependency, we can just import it. Like you see here, we go here, we just import it. No need to do a dependency injection with a separate class that we have to create ourselves. No, we can just import Firestore and we can use it. And quick mention, if you found this useful, I have a Swift package for handling all the other cases with Firestore. So getting documents and actually using listeners that I have created, that I have created custom combined publish that handlers listeners too. And there, all of this is also handled with a generic type. So other than that, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.